Good afternoon, Dr. Thompson, Eric Miller. Sorry about the lighting. This is the best that I could figure out for in here where you could see me, but it didn't look either super bright or too dark. Not usually on camera here. So going into the video here, I actually chose 3 cases, and then I'm not entirely sure if this is what you're looking for, but my interpretation of it was I broke the cases out. I cover the technology concerns, the case itself, and then the leader scholar response for each case. So my primary general topics were privacy and surveillance, ethics, and then cyber warfare. So I'll have my notes here with the links to the articles I'm referencing. That'll be in a document that I'll submit separate from this video. And with that, I'll actually go into the first one, privacy and surveillance. The case is regarding artificial intelligence and facial recognition use by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So starting out with the technology concerns, my concerns would be the scope of the application and use of surveillance, and specifically in the realm of public monitoring for the purpose of public safety. With this topic, I found digging into it that it would be too broad and vague if I did public and private. So I'm sticking to just the public side of this for now. And with that, it's where the surveillance is used, what the circumstances surrounding its use are, and then who has access to the data being collected for that use. So going into the case side of it, like I said, it's for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and they actually paused the use of the software for facial recognition, artificial intelligence, after the technology being used from their contractor named Clearview AI was deemed illegal. With that, there's a bill called the Digital Charter Implementation Act of 2022, and it's Bill C-27. And it actually incorporates, let me look here, there's actually 3 different acts. Kind of, it looks to me like it's all kind of brought in together. It's an act to the Consumer Privacy Protection Act, Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal Act, and also the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act. So it's kind of bringing it all together is my understanding of it. Specifically for this topic, I'm referencing Section 8, and that protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. And the purpose is to protect individuals from unreasonable intrusion into a reasonable expectation of privacy by the state. And then it goes on, the search or seizure will be reasonable if it is authorized by law, the law itself pertaining to it is reasonable, and the search itself is carried out in a reasonable manner. So it looks like that's a good start, I think, as far as kind of not just rampant use of that software and that AI technology. So the leader scholar response that I have for this, again, it's not addressing private scenarios. There's some bleed over, I think, between public and private, but there's also some very distinct aspects between the two. And for this, with the use of artificial intelligence in the facial recognition, when you're out in public, obviously, anybody can watch you, record you to a degree. But with this intelligence, in essence, it's tracking people, or can track, a specific person throughout the course of their day, or, even beyond that. And in my mind, that would, if improperly implemented, would constitute stalking, and in this case it would be cyber stalking. So obviously I think that's something that should be properly used, ethically and legally used. And with that, I think they have to find a way to anonymize the data that's collected and used, and ensure that it's lawfully used for public safety. And anything beyond that would be obviously handled in a different aspect. And then transparency of the data that is being collected, so that the general public would know what type of data is being collected and how and why it's being used. And in my notes here, we just had the recent MSU shooting. And if that software were in use, I think the majority, obviously, of the public would be all for its proper use in that scenario and tracking down the perpetrators. So that would be a good use for it. Obviously, there's some bad uses that it could be used for as well, but that's, I think, a good enough reason is that scenario where it should be looked into as legitimately being used. With that, going on to ethics, my case here is, or at least my link is healthcare ethics. It's kind of a broad topic in itself, but as that area is advancing, you have artificial intelligence in itself is data driven, and the data that this software and the healthcare industry is using is pretty much all healthcare PHI related, your personal health information. And in order to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and get the end goal out of that, they can't really anonymize all of the data. So then they have to look at protecting it, which raises concerns on obviously the privacy of the patient. But there were some deep learning algorithms that were already proven to be able to accurately identify head CT scan abnormalities that required urgent attention. And it states significantly increasing the efficiency of the health services. And I think anyone who are going in for that would want that, used with them, as long as it's disclosed that it's going to be used that way. In contrast, a study by Straw and Wu showed that AI models built to identify people at high risk of liver disease from blood tests were twice as likely to miss the disease in women as in men. So that's that built-in bias coming into play there. So leader scholar response in regards to HIPAA anonymization, or at least an attempt to and protect the data, as well as negating or minimizing that bias that's injected into the data being collected, analyzed, and applied. I think they should do kind of a blanket policy procedure and look at the software that's used across the healthcare industry. I think that would help everybody kind of collaborate and find some good solutions to this, as opposed to everybody acting independently, which often happens in any industry, but especially the healthcare industry. So establishing an industry accepted process for that, I think, would be a good start to a solution for that. And that would include and be applied to the data storage for that data that is used in that. And finally here, cyber warfare. Technology concerns for this, ensuring any boundaries concerning what constitutes cyber war or nation state cyber attacks is well defined and agreed upon, and ensure that the rules would be similar to those of the Geneva Convention, and they're established and agreed upon. Coming from a military background, the rules of engagement are often changing, but the actual rules of war are not. So I think there has to be an underlying concrete base for what constitutes war and what is acceptable and not. Obviously, there's going to be some entities that don't abide by that, just as in conventional warfare. But it still is something that I think globally should be, the basic groundwork of it should be established and accepted. So my case here is a North Korean attack on South Korea journalist. The malware was named Ramblon. It was an Android malware that targeted the South Korea journalist, and the malicious functionalities included the ability to read and leak the target's contact list, SMS, voice call content, location, and some other information from the time that the target was compromised. So that's just kind of a obvious malicious use of it. And So my response to that would be, again, establishing the rules of war, cyber wise, kind of parallel to the Geneva Convention, and keep in mind that the purpose in war itself is to weaken your enemy, and these rules are balancing that weakening and limiting civilian suffering. That's undue. So I also have a link here to an article from JSTOR on cyber warfare, and it kind of talks about separating war crimes from legitimate war tactics. I think that's about it. And then I kind of have some notes in here, and I think my intent on here was establish global rules, then national rules, state, local, kind of filter down from there for what is acceptable and what constitutes cyber warfare. So I think that is about it. I believe I'm within my time frame. Sorry if I went over. I'll edit if need be. Thank you again for the course and the material. It was actually fun. I kind of wish it was actually longer. So thank you again for a good course and everything that I've learned from it.